Today, Much Ado About Nothing is a tragedy masquerading as a comedy. I would die on this hill. So, if you've seen Much Ado About Nothing, you've probably seen a rom-com that goes roughly like this. A war just ended, and the soldiers led by the prince, Don Pedro, return to the estate of an Italian lord named Leonardo in Messina, wherever that is. Benedict is one of the soldiers, and Beatrice, Leonardo's niece, are well known for their battles of wit and their general chafing against marriage. Hero, Leonardo's daughter, and Claudio, who's another soldier, fall in love. The prince agrees to help Claudio woo Hero by wooing Hero for himself while masked, and then giving her to Count Claudio once Leonardo's given permission, because nothing could go wrong with that plan. And then the prince's brother, John, has been villainous before the play even starts and is only recently reconciled. He's got a grudge against Claudio, who has all the glory of John's overthrow, and works with a gentleman named Conrad and a servant named Baraccio to stop Hero and Claudio's engagement. They rattle Claudio, but things smooth out, and he still gets engaged to Hero. And then the prince rallies Leonardo, Hero, and Claudio to trick Benedict and Beatrice into falling in love with each other, even though they have not stated any interest in marriage. Again, I have thoughts. We'll get into it later. In most versions of the text, hilarity abounds as the parallel pair of staged eavesdropping scenes, and the two take the bait. Baraccio comes up with a second plan to stop Hero and Claudio's wedding by falsely accusing Hero of adultery, which works, because men's honor is more important than critical thinking for the characters in this play. Benedict is the only soldier who sides with Beatrice in believing that Hero is innocent. And they decide to pretend that Hero died of grief, which causes the prince and Claudio to be like, oh, sorry, and Claudio to be like, man, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Maybe I should have believed my fiancée when she said she was innocent. And when the town watch catch Baraccio in the middle of bragging about the 1,000 ducats he got from Don John, who's fled Messina, by the way, everything sorts out and there's a double wedding at the end. Or actually, Benedict insists that everyone has a dance before the weddings, so the weddings don't actually take place in the text or on stage. Okay, so, a couple things. Firstly, my interpretation comes from my own text work and also seeing 5 different theaters produce this play in different time periods, etc. And also from a round table from the Arizona Center for Medieval and Renaissance Studies, ACMRS, titled Early Modern Asexuality and Performance, featuring scholars like Ali O'Mara and Liza Blake, among others. Liza Blake's look at Much Ado is particularly relevant to today's essay, but you'll see O'Mara's thoughts on an asexual Hamlet pop up in a different video. I'll link the round table below in the transcript so y'all can go watch it for yourself. I highly recommend. 2. In Shakespeare, comedy and tragedy aren't necessarily about haha funny and oh my gosh I'm crying. Comedies end in marriages, and tragedies include or end with the death or deaths of the title characters. More broadly, comedies end in connection and tragedies end in isolation. Now, gathering all the thoughts together, here's my interpretation. Much Ado is a tragedy masquerading as a comedy. We don't see any actual deaths on stage, though we get dangerously close, and everyone seems connected as they should be. But that's the problem. This play ends with 4 young people getting pushed into their society's perfect relationship, marriage, without regard to whether they actually consent or whether a different relationship structure or no relationship would serve them better. I mean, I have yet to see a production where we actually see or hear Hero explicitly consent to the marriage. She doesn't get much agency at all in the text itself. A lot of it has to be nonverbal, added by the actor. And after Claudio publicly humiliates her to the point where she faints, only to leave her for dead, she goes along with the scheme to trick Claudio into actually marrying her for real anyway. But like, girl, he turned on you so fast. And look, I'm all for people learning from their mistakes and genuinely changing behavior. And Hero does assert her honor before they marry at the end. But still, they better be doing some serious therapy to make sure that that doesn't happen again, because poor Hero does not deserve that. And then we get to my favorite Shakespeare A-spec couple, Benedict and Beatrice. The one-liners from these two, y'all, I have been quoting them for years. And the first time I encountered Much Ado, I was still in high school and had not yet realized that I was Aro Ace. I remember gasping when Beatrice says, "I had rather hear a dog bark at a crow than a man swear he loves me." Like, the way the two of them were so against marriage personally. Now, Beatrice especially is happy for Hero and Hero's marriage. So she's not against marriage like Hamlet is. We'll get to that in a later video. And it resonated with me deep. Like, Beatrice has a whole bit about thanking God every morning and evening for her lack of a marriage. And talks about going to heaven and sitting with the bachelors, quote, "as merry as the day is long." Like, just the sheer fact that Shakespeare wrote some text that you can read, a vision where heaven has a little corner for the ace-specs, makes my Aro Ace heart so happy. Because yeah, that sounds like heaven to me. And yet, everyone around Benedict and Beatrice are constantly pushing marriage. I mean, even the servants get in on the plot. And high school me was inexplicably furious when Benedict kisses Beatrice at the end, because it felt like, to me, like a betrayal, an undoing of all the characterization Shakespeare had done the entire play for these two. Now, I've seen a few more versions since then, and I've learned that my high school reaction came more from my own friction with amatonormativity and other aphobic norms. I saw Kentucky Shakespeare's 2025 version, where I genuinely believed Benedict and Beatrice had history. So their comments against marriage read more like personal digs at each other. Shout out to the Kentucky Shakes team. Y'all did amazing. I wrote a whole review about the show. I'll link it for you all to read. And that's usually what I see, is some version of either Benedict and Beatrice had history and they genuinely do want to be together, but they're too proud to admit it, which, if you're using the quarto version of the text, works fine. Liza Blake argues that you can read an optimistic aspec reality in this version, where they're both reciprosexual recipromantics. I will link definitions to all of these terms that I'm using, by the way. So Benedict and Beatrice are not going to be sexually or romantically attracted to someone until they know that someone's interested in them first. Being reciprosexual or recipromantic doesn't guarantee that attraction will develop, but the possibility opens up once you know someone is interested in you first. But the folio version of the text holds a much different option, and this is where my tragedy lens really kicks in. You see, the folio ending has a couple stage directions and lines that are either assigned to different characters or just aren't in the text. The ending scene for both includes a whole bit where Benedict and Beatrice are kind of forced into the open, and they insist that they don't actually love each other that way. They don't actually want to get married, despite everyone around them saying, "Oh, Benedict is near dead for you. Oh, Beatrice swoons for you," yada yada. In the quarto ending, which is the only one I've ever seen performed to my knowledge, Benedict tells Beatrice, "Peace, I will stop your mouth," and they kiss. In the Kentucky Shakes version, Beatrice actually initiated the kiss, which I really appreciated, because usually Benedict just kind of swoops in, takes over, but this was nice. But in the folio ending, the kiss doesn't happen at all. Instead, Leonato, Beatrice's uncle, interrupts Beatrice's protesting to say, "Peace, I will stop your mouth," and he gives her to Benedict. Beatrice, known for her wit and sharp tongue, does not speak again in the play. Suddenly, Benedict's desire to have a dance before the wedding takes on a new urgency. Beatrice is no longer speaking, and he needs to buy time so that they can figure out what to do. Now, regardless of which version, I think Benedict and Beatrice are on the same page with each other, regardless of how you play them. They could both be in the "we want to get back together, but we're too proud to admit it" camp. Absolutely. They could also both be in the situation of being aspec in an allonormative world, where compulsory sexuality forces them together. Perhaps the ending scene then becomes Benedict playing the part to protect Beatrice, and vice versa. Or they're both genuinely trying to object when Leonato interrupts and forces Beatrice to marry Benedict. So even though the play ostensibly ends as a comedy where everything's fine and settled as it should be, we end up with one couple that has some serious credulity issues and broken trust, and the other couple flat not wanting to be a couple. And that's what I love about Shakespeare. I mean, I find very few of his plays to be solidly one tone throughout, regardless of genre. And his tragedies are often comedies until they're not, or they're riddled with moments of hilarity. His comedies have moments that make you pause. Much Ado can have some pretty rough moments, especially post-Wedding Shame. The play teeters on the edge of having outright bloodshed, as Benedict wagers his life in a challenge, read a duel, to stand up for hero's honor. And I've had several fellow Shakespeare fans insist that because Benedict respects Beatrice, they had to have had intimate history. And while that's absolutely possible, it's not the only option. And I love that. I mean, it's so cool to be able to access a play and walk out with wildly different experiences based on the exact same evidence. Like, the allonormative version can work, so can the aspec versions. And the reason I make so much noise about this particular play is A, it's one of my favorites, and B, it's one of the ones where my aspec interpretation gets the most pushback. I don't know if it's just because it's been cemented in our zeitgeist as like a rom-com for so long that people are just shocked that there's more than one possibility, or what. Because again, I have never, to this day, it is July 1st, 2025, I have never seen a version that acknowledges Benedict and Beatrice might not be allo. Gender in Shakespeare has some room to grow in its diversity, but there's a lot more conversation around gender bending and the performance of gender in Shakespeare. But asexuality, aromantic identities? Nah, Shakespeare was bawdy and R-rated and there's no other option. Except there is. And Much Ado isn't the only play with some aspec opportunities. So, yeah, thanks for listening. Not gonna lie, writing this essay has started an idea for a sequel to Much Ado, where Benedict and Beatrice team up with the friar and Don John to get out of the marriage before it happens, so stay tuned for updates about that. Yeah. Remember, you're loved, you're not alone, and we're in this together. See ya.